Good day, everyone. Today, we are going to tackle about Tolman's purposive behaviorism. Who is Tolman? So, Edward Chase Tolman is a respected animal psychologist who retained a broad philosophical perspective, also a prominent opponent of McCarthyism in 1950s. Edward C. Tolman is best known for cognitive behaviorism. His research on cognitive maps, the theory of latent learning, and the concept on an intervening variable. Tolman was born on April 14, 1886, and died on November 19, 1959. Purposive behaviorism has also been referred to as sign language theory and is often seen as the link between behaviorism and cognitive theory. Tolman's theory was founded on two psychological views, those of the Gestalt psychologist and those of John Watson, the behaviorist. Tolman believed that learning is a cognitive process. Learning involves forming beliefs and obtaining knowledge about the environment and then revealing that knowledge through purposeful and goal-directed behavior, which I'm going to explain later with an example of the famous experiment of Tolman. Tolman stated in his sign theory that organisms learn by pursuing signs to a goal. Learning is acquired through meaningful behavior. Tolman's form of behaviorism stressed the relationships between stimuli rather than stimulus response. So here are the Tolman's key concepts. So first is learning is always purposive and goal-directed. Tolman asserted that learning is always purposive and goal-directed. He held the notion that an organism acted or responded for some adaptive purpose. He believed individuals more than merely respond to stimuli. They act on beliefs, attitudes, changing conditions, and they strive toward goals. Tolman saw behavior as holistic, purposively, and cognitive. So, here is the example of the most famous experiment, which is the cognitive maps in rats. So, in his most famous experiment, one group of rats was placed at random starting location in a maze, but the food was always in the same location. So another group of rats had a food placed in different location, which always required exactly the same pattern of turns from their starting location. So the group that had the food in the same location performed much better than the other group, supposedly demonstrating that they had learned the location rather than a specific sequence of turns. This is tendency to learn location, signifying that rats somehow formed cognitive maps that help them perform well on the maze. He also found out that organisms will select the shortest or easiest path to achieve a goal. So this is the Tolman's maze. So in the example, of the first rats. So, ang ginawa ng rats doon is, yung unang rats is, sila yung una na experiment ni Tolman na parang na-inexplore nila yung maze na una hanggang sa nakita nila yung goal, which is yung food. So, yung isang group naman is pinagsama niya yung first at saka yung second, which is yung second hindi pa alam kung saan yung pagkain. So, yung una talaga yung may advantage na malalaman yung kung saan nilagay yung pagkain kasi may cognitive maps na sila sa kanilang isip, which is na-memorize nila yung mapa kung saan nilagay yung pagkain. Tsaka na found out din ni Tolman na yung organism, which is yung rats, is pinipili yung easiest na path, which is yung kung tinatawag ba natin kumbaga is yung shortcut, diba? Habang yung isa naman is hindi nila alam kasi hindi pa nila na-explore yung maze. That is why yung unang grupo talaga yung nag-perform ng much better kaysa yung sa isa. So next is this is the example, okay? Applied in human learning, since a student passes by the same route going to school every day, he acquires a cognitive map of the location of his school. So when transportation rerouting is done, he can still figure out what turns to make to get to school the shortest or easiest way. So for example, ako is baguhan pa lang ako dito sa Zamboanga, which is di ko pa alam kung ano yung mabilis na daanan dito sa mapa, tsaka yung papuntang town ba or sa school, which is dati di ko pa alam kasi di pa ako kabisado sa mga route or mga daanan dito. Pero habang tumatagal na palagi everyday na akong pupunta sa school or madalas pumunta ako sa town, which is na-memorize ko na yung route, which is yung papunta doon at saka papauwi. Na-memorize ko na, which is mayroon na akong mapa sa aking pag-iisip, which is tinatawag natin na cognitive map. Dahil sa cognitive map, malalaman din natin kung paano na mag-shortcut, which papunta ka ba right o papunta left para madali ka lang makauwi sa bahay or madali ka lang makapunta sa school. Next is latent learning. So, latent learning is a kind of learning that remains or stay with the individual until needed. It is learning that is not outwardly manifested at once. According to Tolman, it can exist even without reinforcement. He demonstrated this in his rat experiments, wherein rats apparently learned the maze by forming cognitive maps of the maze but manifested this knowledge of the maze only when they needed to. For example, like nasa school tayo, which is di pa natin talaga, may mga bagay talaga tayong di pa natin na ipapakita, which is maipapakita natin ito hindi sa ngayon, pero habang tayo natututo or mapipakita na natin ito pag maybe next year or after through challenges ba or mga problems na madaanan natin, kagaya ng rats experiments ni Tolman, which is na-learn nila yung maze by cognitive maps. So minamanifest nila yung knowledge dahil kailangan nila ito para ma-achieve nila yung goal. So next is the concept of intervening variable. Intervening variables are examples that are not readily seen but serve as determinants of behavior. Tolman believed that learning is mediated or is influenced by expectation, perceptions, representation, needs, and other internal or environmental variables. For example, in his experiments with rats, he found out that hunger was intervening variable. So, yun, makikita sa maps na yung goal nila talaga is yung food dahil sa gutom or yung kailangan nila talaga yung food. So, next is reinforcement is not essential for learning. Tolman concluded that reinforcement is not essential for learning, although it provides an incentive for performance. In his studies, he observed that a rat was able to acquire knowledge of the way through a maze, to develop a cognitive map even in the absence of reinforcement. So, for example dito is, yung malalaman lang nila nang walang nagtuturo sa kanila. Dahil parang ini-explore lang nila yung mapa dun sa explanation kanina sa rats. So, ang nangyari yun is nakadevelop sila ng cognitive map na walang nagtuturo sa kanila. So, yun yung isa na na-prove ni Tolman is that reinforcement is not essential for learning. So, thank you for listening, guys. That's all for the Tolman's purposive behaviorism of Edward Chase Tolman. Have a nice day, guys. Thank you for listening.